Okay, you got the recording thing there, yeah? Perfect.
Yes,
So let's get started. Hello, Florian. Thanks a lot for being with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Bit busy over the last few weeks. You've been aware, but it means good things for the banking sector. So pretty happy about that.
Perfect. We'd really like to kind of understand better your career path. So could you give the listeners maybe a brief about your bio?
Sure. I was born in Switzerland in Geneva, and I grew up there. I did my bachelor in business administration at the University of Geneva, and at the end of my bachelor, I did an internship in private banking as a junior portfolio manager for a few months, and then I moved to St. Gallen for a master in accounting and finance, and during which I did a few internships in venture capital in Munich and also in private equity. And in the end, I landed in Frankfurt. I started as an analyst at Royal Bank of Canada Capital Markets in as a generalist, and then moved last year to Goldman Sachs as an associate in the TMT team.
Great, that's great. Now, I'm really curious to understand what was your first motivation to work in finance? So when did you realize that, okay, this is what I want to work in? And what did you do to kind of better understand the field?
For me, it was always part of the vibe of the environment I've been growing up into because my dad is a wealth manager. So, every morning over breakfast, he used to tell stories about his work. And so that instilled it into me. And I just knew I would play a role into the world of finance. I just didn't know exactly which role. That's why I started because I liked valuing companies. So I started in private banking. That made sense to me. And then I noticed, okay, I need a bit more, fast-paced environment. That's why I went to venture capital and private equity. And then I noticed that actually I had to cement way more the technicals, the whole structure and the whole processes of deals. And that's why I went into investment banking. And actually, I prefer as well working on deals rather than, working on a company, then developing it and then exiting the company. So that's why I picked this path.
Sounds great. And how did you kind of get into the student societies? Did they help you in the university, or it was just a waste of time, would you say?
No, it was definitely helpful. I was into one was private equity and venture capital in St. Gallen. And
Mhm.
the good thing about that was you get a good view of the different players in the fields you're interested about. And also you did some few case studies, some introductions, facilitated interviews. I think that all of these are really helpful and a nice complement to studies. It's always good to get good grades and learn a lot, but in the end, a lot of universities, especially in Switzerland, are lacking a bit the pragmatic side of the learning, and the student societies give you that edge in a very easy way since they connect you directly with very good names. And so I think it would be a pity to not exploit this opportunity.
Yeah, perfect. And you also meet a lot of people during that, right? So it kind of probably helps you to understand what you like, what you want to, where you want to go to. So it's,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's essential because there are some people who know more about that than you. It will be always like that throughout your career. And so the more you're into this kind of environment where people know more than you, the faster you learn.
Absolutely. Sounds talking about the university, like what would you say is the importance of being like a target university in wherever you are? And if not, then what would you advise the non-target applicants? Like how can they stand out in that case?
With pleasure. Well, first, I think the name is really important just because you can learn exactly the same or more on the non-targets. And in the end, people will just filter out quicker because they know the name. So they know it's a good reputation, they know the quality is good. And actually, when we notice the people we have at the moment on the floor that are coming up as juniors, it's always from good target universities because it just filters out quicker. There is a lot of applicants. The higher you target a position in terms of reputation and other elements, the tougher it gets in terms of competition. Meaning, one filter that gets used and is pretty efficient is the target university. And in that case, what matters is target university as well in the region where you want to go and the field you want to get into. And so these really matter a lot. For non-target applicants, I would suggest that they network a lot. It's really the only way to really get access to the hidden gems and to some positions which are high level. And it's a path in the end. It's never, you do one jump and you're done. It's always, you do sometimes small jumps and then you get more visibility with better names, be it in terms of university, in terms of internships, and then it gets you to the places that you really strive to from the beginning. But also on this path, you're learning stuff that you will need once you will get to the level that you longed for. And that's what matters also as well, is that, it's not just, oh, I have to go through this name which is a no name, and or this university which is a no name. No, what you learn throughout the way, meaning the technicals, the people you get to know, the processes, everything that matters a lot. So that's why it's never wasted time, and it's not also something that's we should be mindful about. Is not because you go to a good name that it will be necessarily better. There are some no names that have better work-life balance conditions, also incredible pays, incredible people, learning opportunities. So anything is possible. It's not because you're in a non-target that you're gonna land nowhere. Fortunately, it's not like that. But it's for sure helps. It's like a tailwind when you have a good name on your CV.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. And in terms of getting in, breaking in first, so what would you say is, for example, you did portfolio management, yeah, at first. So how would you say that the initial choice of career start affects your overall progress, or does it impact your ability to make it to the top level? What would you say?
It depends on when you make the choice. If you're a bachelor student, a friend of mine, for example, right now started very early doing internships, and I recommended him to explore like as broad as possible the finance world because he's very early into that, so he can do that. If you're a master student, it's your last semester. That's a bit what happened to me. I learned too late that I should do more internships throughout my studies, maybe just taking a year off and sabbatical and then going into studies. And at that moment, you have to be way more selective in terms of the focus you want to show in the interviews, because then the interviewer will wonder why you picked this path if you don't want to stay there. So I would say the earlier you make the choices of where you want to go in your career, the broader it can be. And so ideally, I would suggest any student nowadays to either do some internships next to your studies or take a year off at the end of the bachelor and do some internships there. I think that getting one or two throughout the studies, easy ones if possible, to then get better names during a sabbatical is probably the best path I can see. But still, there are some people who prefer just and up. It doesn't matter if you extend your studies by 1 or 2 years, because in the end, you can still enjoy the academic life to some extent, and it enables you to gather really that broad experience you're looking for. Because once you go really deep into one field, you don't want to show any hesitation to the people who are going to hire you, and so you better stay within that field. So again, the earlier you make the choices, the better for you.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree with that. Okay, so in terms of your career path, right? So you started as an analyst at a different firm and then you moved to Goldman, yeah? So how would you say that what you learned at your first analyst position kind of helped you to break directly into the associate role at Goldman? So what were the skills or something else that you learned?
For sure, I think the technicals in the field I work into, in M&A, you need to have the technicals. If you don't have the technicals, just brings you won't just go through the first round of interviews. What I mean by that is being able to value companies, being able to understand the tasks at hand, being able to understand the processes, all of that. I mean, the technicals are just basic. Then once you've got the basics, you need to add the layer of personality. How driven are you? Does your work ethic match with the one of the company? Are your growth perspectives aligned with the opportunities within the company? which features do you care about in your work? Do you care about mobility, or do you care about perks outside? For some people, maternity, paternity leave is super important. The good names, all of them support diversity and so on. So there are different aspects that come as a second layer, but I would say it's a mix. In the end, it helps you shape what you want. You know better what you want once you go through your first experience. At the same time, you know better what's your value added and what are your weaknesses, and then obviously you try to improve on all of these as much as possible and present them in a strong way, so that you are a candidate with a special mix that makes you unique and needed in the team you're applying to.
That's definitely true. Like getting into this a bit, how many companies would you advise somebody to apply for? Like for example, there's some people who like to focus on just the big firms and they apply to like five or six, I don't know. And there's others who like go all in. They try to kind of diversify their options. So what would you recommend, or what did you do at that time for the first analyst position?
My first analyst position was tens of companies.
Hmm.
It was difficult because it was a time of Brexit, so London was not that appealing anymore. But I had the chance that I could pick any city within Europe due to the languages. The difficulty is finding the balance between, do you feel well in the city you're applying to? Does your CV get picked up by the good names? Because at that point in time, I did not have enough relevant experience to be picked up by names like Goldman. And then back to my point of before, what do you care about in the company you're looking for? For me, it was I wanted to be in the top tiers banks. And so when you take the Ivy League ranking, that's pretty easy. You've got more or less 20 of them is on tier one, tier two, tier three. And that brings you pretty quickly to a list of names. I think in the other fields, it might be a bit more difficult because you might have a different ranking or different approach to the selection of the names. But in the end, I think there is also one dimension, which is, do you know people within the companies you're applying to? If you know a lot of people around, then you need less companies to apply to, and brings you directly to the places you want to get a job into. So I would say it depends. I would just not go too broad, because the issue of that is it takes too much time, and then it needs just too much energy, and you get lost into the mass of candidacy that you've submitted. But at the same time, I think all of the people need a ramp up period, meaning applying to a few positions, trying out a few interviews, and noticing, oh, okay, I'm actually not that good in the first ones. And you need to refine and reshape your story so that when you get to the good ones, then you really get a shot at them. So I would say anything below 10 might not work to me unless you know exactly what you're aiming for. But there is a ramp up period, and one needs to practice.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Now, moving a bit ahead, I'm a bit curious to understand the difference between entering into Goldman as an analyst versus an associate. So, in terms of criteria like competitiveness for the application and how you can differentiate yourself, or what they're looking for basically for both of these positions.
Sure. The more senior a position, the more differentiated the person must be. Meaning, once you apply for an analyst, I don't think we hire analysts directly. I think we only hire through interns, meaning the competition is extremely high. We receive thousands of applications per year, just for Europe, and so it's a very standardized process. You need to know the process, the videos, the questions, and so on. Practice a lot, and so it's not about how much you differentiate yourself within that, but it's how much do you tick the boxes. Do you have good grades? Do you have relevant prior experience? Do you have Once you've got all of that, then you get to the interview, and at this moment only comes the differentiation for the person itself, in your story. Whereas when you come as an associate, you're not part anymore of the normal processes. Is way more, okay, what can you bring to the table which we don't have now? And it's way more, of course you need to tick the box of the technicals of fitting with the culture and so on, but what else can you do? It's, okay, we've got a lot of other candidates like that, and you need to show that through the experience that you've collected up to the moment, that you're actually really good. And once you're really good, then they will be keen to look more into you. And then if it matches in terms of personality, then that's perfect, because it gives you an opening.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just a bit curious to get into it. What about the pre-recorded video test? Is that also the case for the associate role? Is it different in that case?
It wasn't the case for me. But if you think about it, in terms of in the continuity of your question, when you want to hire a VP or a director, a managing director, way above my level, it's in terms of what do these people bring to the table? Well, it's more and more connections to the clients, sector knowledge, and so on and so on. So that's what I was mentioning with more and more differentiating expertise, because at the beginning, well, you're differentiating in the sense you're better than the others. That's why you've been selected, but you're not differentiating in terms of your value add to the company. You're just differentiated in terms of how good you are compared to the others, and that's a slight difference in perspectives, which again, the more senior you are, the more of an impact it has.
Absolutely, that's definitely true. But in terms of, okay, let's compare again analyst versus associate. In terms of, do you have normally these financial modeling tests, like maybe like a day in the bank where you kind of do like 3, 4 interviews? How was it like normally for both analysts and associate positions?
It depends on the bank you apply to. For me, it was, I had technical questions here. At the company I was before, I had also modeling test, multiple choice, and so on. So I would say it depends, and also it depends how convincing you are. If you tackle the technical questions super easily, then a bank like the one I'm working for does not have way more time to assess during days and days and days people. Of course, they have some thresholds that the applicants need to meet, but then in the end, we see directly on the field if you're able to meet the goals or not, and if not, well, that's the up or out strategy policy, which is amongst the top tier banks. So you have to perform all the time. So it's not in the advantage of the candidate, to get in and then not have the level. Well, they should have a specific level. Of course, you grow throughout your experience, so nobody is perfect from start. But there are some basics which are pretty high, the higher the level of the position you apply to. And in the case of associate, while it goes way more into depth, but in my specific case, I didn't have to do any financial modeling.
Okay, great. You also mentioned cultural fit, right? So in terms of how did you know what to do in order to get there? So for example, the team dynamics at Goldman or something like that, where you felt that, okay, I need to get here, then I would fit. So how would you suggest to kind of go about it to know if you fit there or not that way?
You never know beforehand. The only way to know if you will fit with a specific team is to know somebody on the inside who can tell you about it, asking the right questions in the interview, obviously. But what I mean is that up to the moment that you're leaving it, you won't know if you really are fit for that. And I don't think we should try to influence that, because it's a natural filter. You have natural filter with people, with jobs, with a lot of things in life, and it's just, if you're not fit to be within a specific team, don't force it, independently of the name. It just should happen naturally, and it's not something you can, well, you could control that, but you would not really be yourself. I think if you're not yourself, over the long run, it just drives you to either being unhappy, burning out, um, just hating your job. I don't know. And that's a pity. It's not what you want. Whereas if you fit within another team doing exactly the same job, well, then that's where you should be, even if it's not such a great name.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting into that now, like how does your day? I know M&A, like no day is the same, right? It's something new comes up, but how is like an average day in the life of an associate in your position, would you say?
Most of the tasks I take care of are either valuation related or process related or content related. What it means is you populate either materials for deals or for marketing, and it's mostly market views on the company valuation, views on the company product, business model, the strategy, the strategies you can apply to the company, or they can sell IPO, etc., etc. On the deals is process management, the whole VDR and so on, reaching out to clients, connecting, especially between, I would say, mid-level and analysts. You have to take care of mostly reviewing analyst work, delegating tasks, but also providing guidance, all of that. So I would say it's a contact point between mid-level, seniors, juniors, and the client, and at the same time while dealing with the content that you have to produce by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Also a bit curious to kind of understand from you because there is like in finance, or let's say in certain types of finance, there is this traditional path of going from IB M&A to say the buy side or something along those lines, right? So how did you kind of go about it the other way around? And is there really a right way to get about this progression, would you say?
There is a natural way, which is the one you mentioned, going from IB into private equity, which a lot of people consider like being the promised paradise. And for me, it was okay. If everybody wants to go into private equity, well, then I'm gonna start there and see how it is, and if I like it, I stay there. So no need for an in-between step. But then, as I told you, I noticed that actually into private equity, you're way more focused on. It's a very entrepreneur mindset, which I also like, but it's slightly different because you take a company, you focus on the sustainability, growth, and then being able to exit the company usually. Whereas in M&A, you mostly focus on doing deals, and so the both are fast paced, but well, one is buy side, the other one is sell side. It's just the amount, the type of thoughts that you put into the process is totally different. As I said, for one more entrepreneur, for the other one more execution driven into investment banking. And to me, execution fits better for the time being. So that's why I went into investment banking. And I think that private equity is really an appealing thing for a lot of people, but and that's what I meant with the natural path, because you can first learn a lot into investment banking. And once you learn enough about doing transactions and the ins and outs of how doing transactions, well, then you can learn about how to make money out of a company that you invest into. And it's just a natural next step, but not a necessity.
But would you say, like in investment banking, like M&A, would you say the technical requirements or technical skills that you require are more intense compared to, like, say, PE or VC? And how would you say that what different kinds of things did you learn in these three roles, would you say?
Mm-hmm. I would say you do more technicals in investment banking, but the private equity world is not less technical. I would say that the private equity world, actually you need to understand all of that. So it's very technical as well. You're just less doing it yourself. That's why it's less intense in terms of hours of modeling. But the hours that you save in modeling in private equity, they're way more invested into, okay, is that a good investment that I'm making, or how much should I pay for that? And so hence the entrepreneur mindset, investor mindset. In the venture capital, it's a bit different. It's more, is the company gonna, so technicals are lighter, but is the company gonna survive within a few years? And if yes, how do I exit? So you're not assuming, well, the price you're gonna pay is gonna be very sensible to your assumptions, obviously. Sorry, sensitive to your assumptions. But the thing is, the considerations are totally different. It's way more, how do you keep the company surviving, growing, and how, what's your story when you exit as well, in a way more early stage part of the company development than in private equity.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Okay, now talking about the CFA, right? It's like really a super crucial thing that's considered to be quite important, say, certification in the finance industry. But would you say that it's decisive or really important for the roles that you've been doing till now? Is that really something which fits maybe IB more, or what would you recommend somebody who's thinking of maybe jumping into the CFA preparations? Yeah.
Mhm. For wealth management, portfolio management, it is extremely important. It has even an impact on the pay. For investment banking, it's not necessary. Nonetheless, I'm still happy I did it because it made sense to consolidate the knowledge I had from the university. It's very intense, it's a lot of knowledge, but it just brings everything together and it gives you a very holistic view of the investment world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like an addition. It's like it shows also your interest to be in the career for like the long term. It also shows your commitment, and it probably takes like 2 years to complete, right? 1 or 2 years, you said.
2 years uh, is usually pretty good. I would say it's usually 3 years on average.
Mhm. Okay, that sounds fair. Okay, now I think you mentioned it before about networking, say especially for non-targets or something, but it's like a really overused word, but it's really important. So how did you go about it, and how do you really network in terms of who do you really reach out to? What do you talk about? How do you kind of keep the connection going with them? Yeah, if you have any tips, it'd be great.
Do you mean to get this position or at the moment to expand my network?
I would say both. So firstly, when you're like a student applying, you also that's probably a bit difficult, more difficult. And then also once you're already in the career, then to kind of widen your base, let's say.
Sure, sure. I think to get a position, the easiest way is either through the student societies when they organize case studies and so on. Just reach out, say, hey, talk to the person, ask one or two interesting questions, and just show genuine interest, but not in a needy way. And the second is reach out to people from your university on LinkedIn. It does not always work, but to me, it's at least important that I have the people who were motivated because I wish it would have helped me as well more easily. And now at the moment, how I network, well, when there are company events, I try to go. When there are events organized by clients and so on, always try to go. Just doing my work, being diligent whenever I deliver anything to the clients, and being available to the clients obviously as well. All of that are some ways. I think that there is also a natural way, which is when you're naturally becoming friends with some people in the university. You grow up, you have different paths, and then you keep in touch with some people, and then there are some overlapping interests with these people, and then it makes sense to deepen these bonds. And it's just not naturally evolved, I would say. It's a bit more difficult to create that artificially. What I mean is, reaching cold to people, and so it's way more work. I don't do that because I don't have the need at the moment, and neither the time. And but it's also an option. But any events that enable you to connect with people, but in a genuine way, not in an interested way, I think that's what makes the most difference.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree with that. It's also about deciding who do you want to reach out to first, because there's always the difference, analyst versus like the MD, right? So one of them has a different kind of role and the other is focusing on something else. And it's also dependent on that. So would you recommend to kind of prioritize maybe like a mid-level position to talk to, or somebody if you're looking to apply, I would say?
No, I just think different levels bring you a different type of insight or opportunity. I think somebody, the more junior the person, the higher the likelihood that she will help you. But the more senior the person, the higher the impact, I would say. So it's always a trade-off.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. Um, like, I'm really curious to understand that the impact of being able to speak multiple languages, especially the top languages that are required in this region. Yeah. So, how would you say is the team dynamics in terms of the requirements of a language? Do you always normally stick to English? Is it beneficial to speak German, French, or how is it normally like?
So at Goldman in Frankfurt, we speak all the languages, literally whatever pops up at the moment.
Yeah.
There is no filter, no barrier to speak a specific language. Obviously, we always strive, if there are some people who don't speak German, we speak English, but there are other Spanish speaking people or French speaking, and then I switch automatically with them. But doesn't need, even with them, it's never one single language, it's always a mix. And so that's really the beauty of it. It's very natural. Absolutely no judgment on that one. So that's for the collegial dimension of it, but for the deal related dimension, well, if you speak more languages, you can connect with more clients.
Yeah. Definitely, because especially like for example in Switzerland, it's required that you kind of work on both German and French depending on the region, and English is for sure a necessity now. So I agree. But in terms, I just wanted to dive a bit deeper into like the resources you use or something like. Can you recommend some books or some way to kind of work on your skills? Maybe some modeling tests or
Yeah,
something that you used. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. There is obviously, I would recommend people to participate on these platforms, which help you to learn modeling. I think it's just super important. There is Wall Street Oasis. There are a few other ones. It's the only name that pops up into my mind at the moment, but there are like two or three of them, and there are a few uprising ones, I would say, from the US, and that helps as well. So any platform that gives you insights into how to model is key. Also, look for the typical questions of investment banking on the internet. That's also pretty easy to get insights into. So these are the two ones that I use the most. And the third one is, it's not a resource, it's just I practice a lot. I practice a lot by myself, like the story I want to tell, conviction, the different questions that could be asked, different scenarios of yeah, of different setups of questions that could be asked, and as well practicing by myself, but also doing a lot of interviews.
Yeah, definitely. Quite important to get that. I think I lost your video, but no worries. Yes, great. Just wanted to understand because it's a big challenge. I would say one of the biggest challenges in this field. How do you have any tips for the work-life balance story? Yeah, like is there some way to break that or hack it? That way would be quite important to mention, I think.
The only way to have a work-life balance is to be disciplined. And what that means discipline is being able to push back when it goes beyond your boundaries. But at the same time, if you go into investment banking, especially M&A and the top tier banks, I mean, you need to be aligned. You're never gonna work 40 hours per week. And it's just part of the industry. People know that, and they accept that. There are upsides, downsides to it, but I think that the environment per se has a demanding nature in terms of hours, in terms of intensity as well, and so it's a choice. So I would say be very clear about your work-life balance, what you want, but at the same time you can be disciplined up to just a specific level. And so if you accept that, then which is very important is to make that the work style remains sustainable, and hence the discipline to either do sport, do meditation, go out, take time to be with your family or your friends, rest, whatever whatever motivates you. But that's only feasible if you are within an environment that matches more or less what you want to get out of work-life balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of, I would say that in terms of balancing that, the limited time that you have, you really need to probably prioritize, okay, this is really important to me, so I need to do it. So I know a lot of people who are like into banking, they focus on their fitness. So the free time that they have, they completely focus on fitness, right? So as you said, it's probably important to prioritize what you need to have. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's for sure. I mean, priorities matter, but priorities should matter before you pick your job. It's not once you're into your job. So hence my point about picking a field that matches your priorities. And then once you're within the job, then sticking to this list, but also being realistic. There are some times where you cannot have them, and some other times where you can have more than these. So it's never, it's never a constant.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Talking about the choice of career and the other things, do you have any advice to yourself when you were like, say, 10 years ago or something? Would you give an advice to yourself if you could about anything about your professional, personal life? It would be good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. I would definitely say, especially for students, enjoy your university life as much as you can. But what I mean with that is create some stuff, businesses, create connections with people, live moments with people. It's beautiful. It's nice to have good grades, but up to a certain point, like how much marginal effort is this marginal increase in your grade gonna get require? I think that's key. And living experiences, traveling to the extent possible, and all of that. I think that's essential. And then the other one is, if you can pick as early as possible a few options of things you would like to do, just do them. Internship, don't care about the pay and so on, doesn't matter. Just do them and see how you feel, because how you feel is really important. Because once you do these choices too late, well, you're not able to experience as many different feelings as possible. And that's the same with the relationship with people and so on. So I would recommend that choice to happen like as early as possible.
Yeah, I think this talk is, I think, really this kind of what you said is really important for the people who are listening. I think it's really key to kind of get that perspective as soon as possible. It's you save a lot of time, you save a lot of energy, and it's quite insightful in that case. So overall, I think thanks a lot for this really interesting conversation, and I'm really sure that the listeners have gotten some really good insights into the general career path and also some minor details. And yeah, happy to kind of stay in touch and kind of maybe, take this podcast series more focused in the future, right? But for now, we thank you a lot for being here, and I hope you have a good day.
My pleasure, Vian. Likewise.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.